Welcome to In the Mix. I'm Abby Brody. When we're in the mix, we're having real conversations about higher education. Higher education is rapidly changing, and it needs to meet the demands of today and tomorrow. This is a conversation we all need to be a part of. So come join us as we get into the mix. Hi, Abby Brody here, and we are back in the mix. I am very excited about our guest today. She is inspiring, and she will inspire you too. Kimber Osborne is joining us today. She is an educational mentor and a brave one. She herself walks her creed. She left a competitive 9-to-5 job at New York City corporate to go bet on herself and start her own marketing firm, KO Digital. She also decided to become a digital nomad and make the world her classroom. Thank you, Kimber, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Abby. I'm so excited to be here on the mix.
We're so happy to have you. Your story is very inspirational, especially to our youth listening who are wondering how can they make the most out of their life and just grab every opportunity. That comes with a lot of fear. I would love for you to start with us by telling us your story and how you found the bravery to leave what most people would never leave, something that felt very stable, and bet on yourself in such a way. Tell us, how did you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I think it kind of just all starts with like the fact that growing up, I feel like there wasn't an option not to go to college. I feel like I am the normal overachiever, and was just like, okay, all the extracurriculars, all like the internships, everything, because I was just going like one thing to the next to the next. And so when I graduated and started working in corporate communications after college, I was like so stoked. I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is what I've been getting to. I was like, my 3-year plan is I'm going to be making $100,000, and my 5-year plan is I'm going to be CEO. And I get to my first day, and basically I find out that like the job title and the job description was actually nothing of what the actual role was. I was kind of a glorified assistant, and I was like, what? I've spent so much time working to get to this position, and I feel like, right off the bat, I'm being like undervalued. And I was like, I have so much more to offer to this company. I mean, it was a great learning experience. In the end, I stayed there for 2 years, and then I moved to a digital agency. And so here I was like, okay, great. Like now I'm in kind of what I had always been is like my dream position. Like I wanted to like be in like the fast pace of agency and really have the ability to kind of shine. And I felt like I was giving my all to the company. I felt like I was just rocking it. And I was just like, there's no way like my boss and like my, coworkers aren't seeing this. So in my first review, my first like year review, like I was like, okay, going in there being like, oh, I nailed this. I like have put out, I've done this, this, and this, like everything, people say you're supposed to do at, job reviews. And so I walk in and he's like, okay, great. You've been doing really well, but like you can improve here, here, and here. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for like giving me like actionable steps to improve on. Fast forward another year and I'm like, okay, I've done everything, like walk in, I'm like so fired up. I'm like, okay, here we go, senior manager promotion. And my boss almost verbatim gives me the exact same feedback that he had given me a year before. And so that just like riled me up interiorly, riled me up inside, because I was like, here I have been, following what someone has told me will get me to the next step. In my mind, I had done that and beyond. And yet I'm still not being valued, and I'm still not being given the tools to succeed at my role. And so that was kind of the point where I was like, I need to, think what's next. And like, it really taught me that no one is going to value my own like personal growth more than myself.
Wow.
And so you can't put that in someone else's hands. Like you need to be proactive and realize if you want to, grow, the ultimate person who's going to have your back in that game is yourself.
I love how you talked about this checking of boxes,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because so much of education is about checking boxes. Students and parents have this idea of what it takes to get there. And I think all of us, once we get there, right, it's like school, then life, which we can get into a whole story why that doesn't work. But you're in the school, you're checking. And life doesn't work like that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Most times, actually, I would say all the time. So what is your advice to those students who are checking every box? If you could talk to your old self back when you were doing all those boxes, what would you say to her?
I think really the thing I would ask myself is, who are you doing this for? And are you doing it for the expectations of someone else or the expectations that you've set for yourself? I mean, I think I have been conditioned my entire life to be like, this was the path that I wanted to take, or that I should take. Not the path I wanted to take, but like the expected path. And so I think if I were, to talk to myself back in high school, I would probably say, do not lose like your enthusiasm to learn. I think one of the coolest things for me, during like college, I think I probably did like 12 internships in the 4 years that I went to college. And honestly, like the biggest thing that all those internships taught me was more so what I didn't want to do. I think I would do things, and like after, the 3 months or the semester long or the summer long period, I would be like, you know what? Like that didn't like make me feel good. Like that just didn't like make me feel like I was making a difference, or that was something that would excite me to wake up every day and do. And so for me, I think it's all about, figure out what you want to do. And then also like, don't be afraid to try things and realize that you don't like that. Because if anything, that's like helping you go from like this big of options and slowly kind of like shrinking it down until you really find kind of like that niche, or create your own niche that's really going to light you up and make you excited to get up every day.
So you spoke a lot about this internships. Did you find that the real world experience the most informative? Like what in your schooling experience do you think was the most transformative to allow you to be able to be here and be so brave as you are today?
Yeah, well, it's so funny. I don't want to date myself, high schoolers, but I'm a millennial. So when I went to college, I majored in public relations, and there was not a social media specific class. Like I did not learn any university taught social media skills. So I did, being like the young kid, like kind of be like, oh, well, you can do this Twitter thing. You can do the tweets. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll try. And so it definitely was like a learning by doing. And I think it's so funny that especially with like online careers and like digital skill sets, is it's like what you're taught one year might completely evolve the next. Like even like in social media, which is kind of one of the pillars that I really work under. I mean, a year ago, TikTok wasn't even a thing. And now I have like corporate clients, like professional healthcare and pharma companies being like, how do we get into TikTok? Like, how do we make this happen? And it's like, that's not something you can like learn. Like, it's not like your school's going to have TikTok 101 and it'd be like relevant or like relatable or even like changing. Like the platforms themselves are such an evolution that it's really hard to be like, read something out of a book. Like I will say I like the amount of, like marketing, I don't even remember the names of them, but like all like the marketing concepts and, behavioral, like, theories that you're supposed to be aware of. I've never applied in my real world job. It's all about, being able to have those skill sets and learn from doing. I've always thought that is, the best way to learn something. And also it just shows, it really shows your proactiveness and willing to learn something new, because a lot of this isn't aren't skills that were around 4 years ago, let alone 2 years ago. And we're constantly evolving and we're constantly learning, especially like in my business with digital marketing. And I mean, I'm sure like in a year from now, we'll be talking about like a new platform or a new skill set that we like had no idea even existed now. And it just kind of shows that, for me, kind of that like prepackaged education that I had in university, like really the things that kind of moved the needle for me were like the internships that I proactively got on my own.
Couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we know as educators on this side that theory alone doesn't lead to mastery. Learning and sitting in that classroom and here, you can't even remember the names.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they were never applied and never had meaning. So, there are a lot of students that we talk to who are really interested in social media. Facebook has created their own social media certification. What do you say to a student when they're trying to decide, do I go get this degree in marketing, which has no social media classes in it? Most universities, you still do not offer this. It has not changed much.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So maybe I'm younger than I seem.
You are just so young. So young. It's like you just graduated. It is very hard to pivot. And you're right. They're based in a model of textbooks and, all the old ways of learning. And social media is very much in the second, in the now.
Exactly.
What do you think about these certifications? Do you think that is a route that people, Facebook has one that's a 1/20th the price of higher education currently. Do you think they have a lot of value? Would you recommend that to someone?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's great to really grow in a niche and really like position yourself as an expert in like Facebook ad manager. Like that's something that's like incredibly like complicated, and the average like marketer, just doesn't have, the specificity of knowing kind of everything and the best practice of that. So I would never discourage anyone from like taking, an online class or like taking, some kind of accreditation from Facebook. I know also like Google has a lot of these kind of accreditations for like Google AdWords, analytics. I know back in the day Twitter did, so I don't know if it still does, but I think it's so important, if this is something that like interests you, is to just kind of really come in and create like this niche position and really like showcase yourself as the expert of X, Y, or Z. Rather than just kind of coming in as like a generalist. I think a lot of companies are really valuing the need to hire specialists within this kind of digital skill sets.
Absolutely. So thank you for reflecting on your schooling and giving some advice to those. But I want to dive into the part I'm really jealous about.
Oh, the fun part?
The digital nomad life.
Yes.
Okay. I want to hear how that works. What, because at MYX, we're really passionate about the world being your classroom.
Yeah.
Right. That like life is the ultimate teacher. There's nothing you will learn more than through travel and exploratory. And you've lived, how many years were you a digital nomad?
5 years, basically almost to like the day. So actually I'll kick off with my first, trip. So actually this was while I was still employed with my digital agency role. One of our clients was a international airline. And so within the first week of being on this account, I was like being exposed to like all their different destinations that they fly to. And there would be ones that I wouldn't even know if it was a country, if it was a city, where it was on the map. I just felt like I was in just such this little bubble of just being like, oh, I know like Western Europe and, where like Mexico is. And honestly, at this point, I'd only actually ever traveled internationally twice. I studied abroad in college to Australia. And then for my high school graduation present, went to Italy and Greece on a class trip actually. And so I was like this very kind of like, girl from Kentucky who never like thought, oh my gosh, like what is it like to go to Africa? And so within the first week, literally, I remember getting back Friday night from working, and I just bought myself a round trip to Nairobi, Kenya, by myself. That was my first trip that I ever went on internationally. I was just like, I'm going to Africa. I spontaneously bought a ticket 10 months in advance. So it turns out that this international flight or international airline did a partnership with the Kenyan Tourism Board, and they needed someone from the account team to go and just like support it from the airline's perspective and make sure like the reporters didn't have any questions. And so I literally flew to Africa. I fly back to New York. I'm in New York for 2 days, and then I fly back to Africa, back to Kenya, back to Nairobi, and I'm there for another like 10 days and then come back. And so literally for the entire month of February, I was like in Africa. And it was just so interesting because on this trip, on this like media trip, I'm sitting next to a reporter who was a year younger than me, who was talking about how he had this press trip and then he was going to like Macau like later that month and that he had done this. And I was just like, dude, I want that job. Like, I want to be like flown around the world to like do writing. And so when I came back from that second trip, that was really when the seed was placed in my mind that, you know, going into this 2-year interview or 2-year review, which was maybe 4 months later, that if it went one way, then great, I was going to get promoted and I was, you know, going to keep hustling at this agency. And if it didn't, then I needed to do something on my own, that I needed to take control of my career path because there were so many more options being like available than there had been when I graduated college. And so that is kind of like this like grand like awakening in Africa, being like, there are so many different jobs that I can have that, you know, utilize my like social media skills, utilize my writing, but also give me the flexibility and the freedom, which I'm all about, Abby, to just be able to like explore more of the world. And so, as we know from earlier in this interview, I didn't get the promotion. And about a month later, I quit. And I was like, you know what? I have been saving ever since this trip to Africa, because I was just like, in the back of my mind, I was like, there's a possibility I'm about to go off on my own, create my own business, become a freelancer, really like invest in myself and really bet 100% on myself. And so it was just like a super scary feeling because obviously, you know, none of my friends had done this. All my friends were very much like me, high overachievers who went to good schools, who, you know, got into the, you know, a corporate job and have just been keeping up with it year after year. And here I was being like, you know what, like I'm done with this. I'm going to work part-time. I'm going to be traveling. And like to this day, like my like most dearest like possession is my passport. And it just was like this like scrapbook of me continually betting on myself and like the experiences and the places that I've been to. And it just made me like just so, you know, I'm really proud. Like I'm really proud that I was able to create this kind of life, my dream life, be able to travel, and be able to have, you know, the freedom and flexibility. And also like, I make more money than I did before. Like
This was a good bet you made.
Now, I have a fabulous life here. I'm super excited to start traveling again this summer once things you know, open back up. But like, I'm like feeling so on top of the world. I feel like, you know, talking back to that, you know, 17-year-old me, you know, I would have 100% been like, you need to see more of the world, because I think it's such a like huge pressure to ask anyone at that age to be like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?
So much there, right? So much pressure.
It's so much pressure, but also it's just so unrealistic. Like I
still don't know some days what I want to do with my life, and I'm 40. So
Yeah, like, it's just like, I feel like, and so as part of this kind of like 5-year journey that I've been on, a lot of that has been solo traveling. And so I've been not only doing like the digital nomad stuff, but I've been like doing it on my own. And I think it has taught me so much, not about myself, but about like time management and just like how to have like interpersonal relationships when, you know, you're meeting people and you probably only kind of have that friendship for, you know, maximum a week. Like, how do you do that? And like, how do you like prioritize working when you like met a fun group of friends who like wants to go like on this remote island on a Wednesday, and you're like, yeah, great, would love to, but like I have to work tomorrow. So it's really just like you become your own boss. Like, it's like, it seems very simple to say that, but it's so true, because you really are the person who makes the decisions at the end of the day. And I think when you know, when you don't have someone telling you what to do every day, or saying, here's the assignment, or like, this is what you need to have done by end of the week, and you realize that person is now yourself, you just learn so much more like about not only how businesses work, about skill sets, but you also learn how to like, you know, just really step into that business and really step into that CEO mindset.
I so resonate with what you're saying. You know, it's something I say a lot. I believe in the power of travel. I think
Mhm.
it's transform. Actually, we know as educators, most transformative experience, educational wise, are students who go abroad. They all
Mhm.
come back completely transformed, because sometimes you got to get lost to be found, and you got to be out of your comfort zone to be able to like see yourself. I want to transition to that because you talked about people.
Mhm.
And what's really fascinating at MYX is we study the long-term investment, return on investment of higher education. It has zero to do with the classroom and everything to do with people, networks, access, those friendships. Like your roommate might be your future investor in your company, like all those people. So in this travel, how is that like the networking, and how has that helped you like fulfill your dreams?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I was really like in my prime in digital nomad, I was kind of one of the first or only people. Like, when I would be like staying in like a hostel, like people would not be like on their computers at breakfast. And so I think like for me, it was almost maybe even being like a model to others to show them, oh, like this girl is like here. She's like, says she's just working in the mornings and then can like hang out with us. Like, this is amazing that she is like making money while she travels. I think the majority of the people that I would meet when I was like traveling would be like, oh, I worked this job, or I worked this summer job and I saved up this much money, and like I'm traveling until this money is gone. And I was like, oh, well, like I totally understand that. And then they would go to, 5 countries in a 2-week period. And I would still be sitting in the same city, because for me, like, I was such a slower traveler, because I didn't have this like pressure of, seeing everything until my money ran out. Because I was making money and working, I was able to really take my time and like explore things like more in depth. And I didn't feel this like rush to see everything. And even thinking back to like, as a professional, and I think a lot of Americans like experience this as well, is like, they have 2 weeks of vacation, maybe 3 if they're lucky each year. And so for them, like, a vacation is like almost like a checklist. Like, they have to, exactly. It's like, okay, I'm going to South America. Okay, well, you're like half the time on flights. Like, you might just see like the 3 most like touristy things, like, in Santiago, Chile. But are you like taking the time to, read a Chilean author like in the park and like people watch and like really like enjoy like going to a museum? I feel like when you have like that ability to really kind of take your time, you get to see so much more of the culture. And to your point about having that like global education, like you really get to like invest and become a part of the culture as opposed to being a tourist who just pops around. When I was
So I just jumping in for 1 second. How jealous are you of Gen Z? Now distant working is the norm, right? And now you can do your school from anywhere.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so what is your, so Gen Z is the first generation to have this opportunity. And for them, it can be really scary because they're the first. And they've been told, and their parents went to that college down the road, and they're going to have, and now all of a sudden, they can do school from anywhere around the world. What do you have to say to them?
I mean, take advantage of it. Like, take advantage of it. Like, you are in such a cool, unique position. And by far, like, use it to explore something. Like, learn a new language. That was like the one thing I wish my parents had instilled in me, is this like actual desire to like learn a language. I took Spanish for 12 years, and like I could be like, hola, like me llamo Kim. And now I live in Mexico, and I feel like I'm like, why wasn't I fluent? How did I take 12 years of a language and not become fluent? So like, if your desire is to like learn a language, go there. I think that is the best way. That is the best way to learn a language. If your desire, is to learn, Roman architecture, go to Italy, go to Rome, like experience, really immerse yourselves. And I think, yeah, especially in this kind of, online remote world that we're really shifting into, like you need to, again, kind of check in with yourself and say, what are the things that are really going to light me up? What are the things that are going to like make me excited to wake up in the morning? Like, and I think too, like Gen Z just has such more flexibility in like how they make their career. And I think there's no set kind of plan anymore. Like there's so much more stuff to be available. There's so much more for you to learn from. I mean, I'm obviously grateful for my path because it led me here. And now that I know that, like, I definitely just want to kind of share that, like, my findings and like tell my story to others, because I think like you can have this example of someone, who is an all A student, president of this, captain of varsity volleyball team, like everything. And then it's like, well, all of that led me to giving it all up, quitting my corporate job, backpacking for 3 months in Southeast Asia, and then coming back and creating my own company. Like, again, it's just, you don't know where things are going to take you. And so Gen Z, do it up.
Do it up, Gen Z. You just heard it, okay? Listen to Kimber. She knows what she's doing. Kimber, thank you so much. We're out of time. It's just been such like an inspiration. It's really, you were on this path before it was a path. And now this is a real established way people can learn and live, and the world can be your classroom. And thank you for—
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Such a pleasure. So thank you all for tuning in. As you heard it, the world is your classroom and it's waiting for you to grab it. Stay tuned. We have a lot of incredible people coming up in the mix.